Hello, welcome to the third video on the restoration of my 74 Series 3 E-Type. Yesterday I finished installing the boot panel. I've done all the fettling, cleaned everything up, and I'm now leading across the rear section around the lights. Now all this will be covered with the chrome finishers, but because you don't know what's going on behind the chrome a little bit later on, I think it's nice just to do this so that there's no rust coming back through or any salts or anything getting in a little bit further down the line. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to finish, I've done all this, I'm just going to finish off this small section here and just show you how it's done. I'm not a professional leader by any means, but as long as you get the lead in and smooth it off, it's going to do its job. Now with this leading, it's important, it's vital that everything is scrupulously clean, because if you get any dirt or rust down in the joints, it will react with the lead, it'll spit and it'll throw the lead out, and it's pointless doing it. So first of all, you get a tin in flux and you just paint it on like that where you're going to do it. And then I've got a small propane burner. And what you need to do first, you need to dry the flux gently with a gentle heat so it's dry, and when it's ready it will turn bright, almost like the lead solder itself. Just keep working that in. You can see the steam coming off now. It's drying. Now it's turning bright, so we're almost there. Now we've got some lead solder. Again, I've cleaned this up. What I use, I've got a brass wheel, a brass wire wheel in the drill, and I just clean it up, make sure there's no dirt, because if this has been stored for a while, it can get dirty. So I hope you can see this over top. Then you just warm it up, warm the lead, and then just gently move it into the thing like that. Just keep the heat moving along. You don't have to be too fussy at this time, you just get some lead to stick to the metal, that's all you need to do. You don't want much in these joints, it's just basically to seal it. So that's the first application, and then you warm your paddle up, get some tallow on it, and then you go back, and then you get it to melt, and then you just gently work it in. Always wear gloves, because this obviously it gets very hot, and then you can just smooth it off. There you go. and we let that cool down, and then what I use, I've got a small, well, it's not a small one, but a reasonable size surf form. I just take the excess off. That's it, and now we can finish off with a fine wheel, and then if you need to, you can just get your contours with a tiny little bit of filler or knifing stopper just to bring it up. But that seals all the joints, strengthens them obviously, but more importantly it stops the ingress of water and stops the rust from forming a little bit down the line. Right, I'll just show you round the other side. This has all been cleaned, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to re-lead all this section here. Let's see if I can get you back a little bit. Hang on, let's get you back in focus. All this will be then leaded, then I should clean it up. And what I will then do is put a coat of epoxy primer, and then we'll put 2 heavy top coats on that, and then that can stay drying for a week or so before we get on to the final preps. Right, I'll carry on with that, and I'll see you later. Hello, welcome to another short video on the restoration of my 74 Series 3 Roadster. I've moved away from the boot today. What I've done, I've finished the leading, and I've put 2 or 3 coats of primer filler on, and what I want to do now is just let that dry for about a week really, because I want the paint to, because it's in several layers, I want it to dry thoroughly all the way through. It is a 2-pack, it does dry chemically, but if you allow it to dry, it tends to overcome the problem of sink, which is where stuff settles, and a possible crazing is where the paint dries because it's on fairly thick. If you put too many coats on and it's too wet and too heavy, it dries like crazy paving. So it's best to avoid that. So that's the reason why I've moved on to the front suspension. What I'm doing today is setting up the torsion bars and the lower wishbones. So what I've made a fixing brace. I've only used MDF. It's not under tension, so it doesn't have to be strong. It's got to be, you drill it out from centre to centre. It's 49.69 centimetres. And that gives you the factory set height for the lower wishbones. And what you've got to do, you drop off both sides so that the wishbone moves freely. You've got 24 splines on the front, 25 on the rear. Now each spline, if you look across the plane, is slightly off, so you can get really fine adjustment. So what you have to do, you have to fit the bar without any connections both ends. Now I'll move the camera and show you. Right. Remove your locking bolt here, which goes through the torsion bar. Take off the bolts from your jack plate and remove it off the spline. And then you twist both sides so when it fits on, they line up perfectly with the hole. Now that is about, let me have a look, I don't know if you can see it because it's very awkward, about half a spline out. So what we do, we take it off this end, rotate it one spline, fit it back in, and then go back into here, slide it on like that. And this then, I don't know if you can see that, but that's absolutely perfect. So the bolt holes line up under here, and you push this in, then make sure it goes firmly home, and then you put your locking bolt back in, tighten it up, and then you can remove your bar here, and that is the set factory height. So I'm going to carry on and do that now, and then later on I want to show you my tip for fitting your top ball joint with your shims and spacers without damaging it. So we'll go back to that a little bit later. Right, I've got all the torsion bar now bolted up and torqued up, and the small lock nut put in position. What I'm doing now, I've got a ratchet strap on the damper mountings, top and bottom, and I'm just slowly now applying pressure to bring up the bottom wishbone, because obviously now it is under stress. It's under the strain of the torsion bar. Now normally what you would do, you would jack this up, and then the weight of the vehicle would compress it, but because of course there's no hinge or anything in it, there's no weight. So basically what you do is a ratchet strap, but you must be careful. This is now starting to get very tight. It's under a lot of strain. So what you need to do is just very carefully and very gently lift it up. And as you can see now, it's starting to come into position. A little bit further like that. There it goes. And now what you can do, you can put your new nut and washer on there. There you go. Now that's relatively safe now. What you can do, if something happens now, it's not going to go anywhere because it's secure with the main nut. So just bring it up a little bit more. Bear in mind there's probably a good ton of tension on here now. That's it. You can see it coming up. Now when you get it up to there, you can get your spanners and just, well, if I get the right size it'll help. Hang on a sec. That's better. Put a little bit of pressure on it. That's 19, that's it. If you just push down gently, the taper will actually lock the thread, and you just tighten it up gently like that, all the way up, and that secures it into position. This will then enable me to release the tension. At this point I won't be putting the damper on because the damper will be at its maximum extension and put strain on it. I should just release this and just let it go back to its normal position. But this will now enable me to get the discs on, the calipers on, the hubs and all the bearings, and set everything up, and then I can move on to the other side. Two things that I think none of the nuts and bolts and split pins are tightened up to factory spec yet. Everything is assembled, but it's all sort of loosely assembled, because I believe that as it all goes on, it will all find its natural position, and then when everything's done, you can walk round and spanner up, which basically means you can go around the whole vehicle, check every nut and bolt, tighten it up to factory spec, put your split pins and your lock washers and your locking wire and everything else that you need to do. And if you do find you've made a mistake and you've got to disassemble, you don't have to go removing split pins and untorquing stuff and moving it. It makes it much easier to move things around and get it right. Now, one thing I wanted to point out that I forgot to mention when I was doing the torsion bar, I hope you can see it. Right, where are we? Sorry about that. Here you have a concentric cam. Now this adjusts the ride height once the vehicle is fully laden. You've got all your fuel, all your oils, all your cooling system and everything in. Now what you need to do with your torsion bar is slacken this and set the cam on the lowest point. You can see, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a slight step there. So you rotate it until this bar drops down into it, and then you pinch it back until it's touching, and that's the lowest setting. That means then that you can get your maximum height adjustment, as I say, once the vehicle's fully laden, and then you measure them from the ground and I'll do that much later on down the line and get all the right ride heights sorted out. So that's it for now. Next little bit I'll show you when I move to the other side how to put the top joint in, and then we'll have a final look round. I'm going to show you how I fit the top ball joint. Now I've got a new kit. We just grease up the pin and drop it in, so that's fine. Now these systems have springs, so obviously they've got to be compressed. Hope you can see that. So it's essential that you put on eye protection, because these would be under compression, and if they come out they can do quite a bit of damage. So we've got the steel cup, just a little bit of assembly grease there. Obviously make sure that the bevel end goes down onto the pin. Push it in like that. That should move freely. Then drop your spring in. Then you've got your flat plate. This has a hole in the middle, and it's the hole that takes the grease nipple at the end of the thing. Right, at this stage I've got an old G-clamp, and the bottom foot is missing, so you've got this just like this little dimple here. And what I find it's fairly easy to do, he said, is drop that in like that. Now let's put the shims in first. We've got 5 shims. Just drop all the shims on the top like that. You might not need all of them, but if they're on there, then you can take them on and off as you wish. Now this is either going to go really easy, or it's going to take about an hour. And then you just wind that down nice and gently until it goes tight, and that holds it in. You can see the reason why the glasses are on, because if it does pop out, now that's just slightly too many shims. So take a couple out like that, drop this back in again, and you've got the lip there. Then what you can do is get your split pin, your circlip I mean, pop your circlip on, start again. Right, let's have another go. Clamp that on there like that, wind it down until it's tight. Pop your things in, and then you should feel that the circlip goes in fairly easily. It's important to have a good pair of circlip pliers, because it's quite a fiddly job. Clip hold of them, push them down in like that. Let's see the reason for the safety glasses, because if that had flown off, it could possibly take your eye out. There you go, clamp them in like that. Fit on your circlip pliers. Push them down in. That should be it. I'll just get a small screwdriver. Just to make sure it's seated. That's it. Now what you should have relatively easy movement. Not loose, it shouldn't be loose. And then you push up, and you shouldn't have any free play up and down. If you have free play, put another shim in. If you don't have any, if it's too tight, take your clip out and take a shim out. But that is just about right. I've used 3 of the 4 shims. That feels good. So what you do now, you've got your little nipple there, grease nipple, and a nylon washer. You insert that over there, and then that screws in. Like that. You tighten that up, that's fine. You then got your rubber boot. Put a little bit of assembly grease in there. That slides up underneath like that. Twist that round and it should pop on. And then you get your clip, open it up, drop it over the top, and it's fixed. Luckily that went reasonably well. It can take, as I say, if it slips off, it can take up to half an hour to do. So what I'll do now is just get the little hooks. Got to be careful when you're putting the hook on, because you can put it through the rubber. Just get the hook, ease the rubber on, slip that on, tighten your grease nipple up, give it a greasing, and it's done. That's the way I do it. As I say, it's to me it's the safest way to do it, and you can do it on your own without having help to fit in the clips and pieces. Well, I hope that helps. I'll sign off now. I'm gonna finish now and have some lunch. So I'll catch you on the next video. Thanks very much for watching. Bye now.